Here in this final lesson, before the review lesson of the first chapter, we're going to take a look at how we can gather content for our project. Okay, in this particular case, we're going to go back to Photoshop. We've got our content all laid out at once here, so we've got our basic tracer image ready to go. And I usually export this as is. Now, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to export this as a PNG24, and you can do this as a JPEG or any type of compression setting that you like. You can do it as a bitmap. I'm going to go ahead and save this as tracer to my desktop. If you recall, in the earlier lesson we already saved our background image. I'm going to go back and do it again just to review. So I actually turned off the buttons and the text, and I exported this. Now remember what we did here is we reused our screen and our logo and our background together. We combined them rather, and that's a lot more efficient than trying to use them as three different objects. So in this case we can get away with that, so we're going to do that and we'll save it as background again. Just replace it, and I'm just doing that as a review. Now we're going to turn these buttons back on, and we'll remind ourselves of what we were talking about with the button maker. Autoplay Media Studio 5.0 comes bundled with a button maker tool that allows us to create buttons, and fairly detailed buttons that can create really detailed shadow and glow effects because they contain PNG with alpha images. So basically what we're going to do here is take one of our buttons, we're going to shut everything else down. Okay, so we've got a transparent background, and I'm going to bring it to the middle of the stage, and I'm going to take a magic wand and turn the tolerance down, and I'm just going to select the area around that button and crop to it. So basically I've got the smallest possible area around the button where the shadow effect still takes effect. So if I turn on my background layer, you can see that there's a shadow effect around that button. And I'll go ahead and zoom in on it for you so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. There's a sort of a dark glow coming off it. You might not see it in this movie because we're using QuickTime to compress these training movies, but it is there. And you can use any type of drop shadow or glow effect that you might want to use. In this particular case, we're going to create this button as a multi-state button to be used in our application. This lesson is about gathering content, and we've already got our background images. The only piece that we have left to do here is our button. I suppose technically gathering the logo and the screen was part of the thing too, but I'm sure you guys have your own logos to use in your projects. Okay, so we've got our button selected here, and I'm going to make a separate layer on top of that. Now the idea here is that you're going to have different states of your button for when your mouse is over it, for when your mouse is down, and so forth. So I'm just actually going to create a little layer here that, and you can do this any way you want, that just sort of lightens up the button. See that? So that, again, you might not see that all exaggerated a bit here with the QuickTime compression, but there we go. So it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, and so forth. And then I'm going to create a second layer like that to make it a little bit darker, and that's going to be when the mouse gets clicked down on the image. Okay, so this just takes a quick sec, and I'm going to, there we go. It's not very detailed, but it's good enough for our purposes. So I'm going to turn off the background so we've got the transparent image. Now if you don't use Photoshop, you can use Fireworks or a variety of other image editors, but the idea is you want to export as PNG24 format, and that's PNG32 with alpha. It's carrying its own transparency channel, and make sure you check the transparency option in whatever program you're using. So we'll save this first button state on the desktop as button, okay, PNG with transparency. Then we're going to turn on the up state, and we're going to save that to the same spot as button up. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing with the button down image. Now you can use anything you want here. You can use color variations, anything. The whole idea is that these different images are going to be stitched together seamlessly into a working button instantly by the button maker. So we'll call this one button down, and if you like, you can create a separate image for your buttons disabled state, but in our case we're just going to leave it like this. So if you go to your Autoplay Media Studio program folder, you'll notice that there's a folder here called Tools. And also, you'll notice that in your Autoplay Media Studio workspace environment, that under Tools, there's a little thing called Button Maker. So those are the two ways you can get to the Button Maker. I'm just going to go to Tools and then click on Button Maker. Here we've got our Button Maker tool, and it's going to start up with a new button, and it's going to call it Untitled, and it's going to be blank. Okay, so we've got these 6 panes here in this side, and these are the different states of our button. So here's the disabled states, and here's the normal states, and here's the highlight states. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize these applications behind me so that I can take the buttons that we created. You'll see here I've got the button, button up, and button down images, as well as our tracer and background images. I'm going to take the button image and I'm going to drag it into one of these panes. As you'll see, it created a button across all 6 panes. Okay, in the Properties Inspector over here, I can control this Click Here text, and I'll do that last. For now, I'm just going to get the button set up. So I'm going to take the button up image, and I'm going to drag it into this up highlight area here, and leave it there. Now, if we audition our button over here, you'll see that when we hover over it, it gets a little bit lighter. Okay, hopefully you can see that on the QuickTime. But anyway, you can audition your button at any time over here. Okay, then we're going to take the button down image, we're going to drop it here into the down normal state, and then dragging it from here, instead of our desktop, and drag it into the down highlight state. And we've created a little button here. As you see, when I click on it, in the audition screen it gets darker. So I'm going to maximize the button maker here real quick, and we're going to adjust our text. So Click Here is a good default text. Let's leave that for now. The font seems a little large, so we're going to go ahead and shrink that down a bit to 12-point font, and as soon as I click in here, that'll take effect. And I'm going to also take off the anti-aliasing, and actually I think I'll go down to 11-point. Now, why am I taking off anti-aliasing? When you're using really small fonts, often that'll make it more legible. So anti-aliasing, experiment with it and see if it works good for you, and if it doesn't, don't use it. If it does, great. Okay, over here in our Properties Inspector, we can control the font colors for the different states of our font. So just to keep it simple for now, let's take the first one, the up normal font color, and let's convert that. Let's change it to a red, okay, because it stands out. And in our up highlight, so that's going to be this state here, when our mouse is over it, let's change that to a, how about a orange? Sure, that looks pretty good. At least it makes it obvious. Maybe a slightly darker orange. There we go. There we are. Okay, and we're going to leave our disabled state alone. We're going to go to our down normal state, and I'm just going to change that to like a dark red. And here you can see when I hover and click what I get. So it's a pretty nice little button. Okay, we've spent enough time doing this, and I think you guys get the idea. What we're going to do is click on this little save icon here, or go to File, Save, or Save As, and we're going to save our button on the desktop. So just type in button and press save, and when we close our button maker and we go to our desktop, you see suddenly there's this file here, a button file. Okay, so I'm going to actually delete these raw button files. We don't need them anymore. This is the only button we need for Autoplay Media Studio. And as well, we've got our background image and our tracer image, and we're ready to go. That's all the content we need to do our project in Autoplay Media Studio, and we're ready to go. So basically what we've learned in this lesson is that when you're gathering your content, plan everything out good, understand which portions of your content you are going to be able to reuse, in our case those being the buttons because they're identical, and understand which portions can be attached, such as the background, screen, and logo images. So that's it for this lesson. We'll go on to a review of this first chapter, and then we'll go on to the next chapter and get started building stuff right away.